What if the reason people don't respect you isn't because you lack confidence, but because you show too much of it? That sounds wrong, doesn't it? Because your entire life, you've been told the opposite. Speak up, be bold, show your personality, express your emotions. Be seen. But what if that advice is exactly what's making you weak? Look closely. Think about the moments where you felt ignored, dismissed, underestimated. You tried harder, didn't you? You spoke more, explained yourself, defended your position. Maybe you even raised your voice, just a little, because deep down you believed, if I show more confidence, they'll respect me. But something strange happened. The more you tried, the less it worked. And that's where most people get stuck, because they never realize confidence isn't something you show. It's something you control. Let me explain. Imagine you're in a room full of people. There's one person talking constantly, confident, energetic, expressive. They're trying to prove something. You can feel it. Every word they say, every reaction they give, it's all visible. You understand them within minutes. You know what excites them, what annoys them, what makes them react. They are predictable. Now shift your attention. There's someone else in the same room. They barely speak. They listen more than they talk. They don't react immediately. They don't chase attention. But somehow, you keep noticing them, not because they're loud, but because you can't figure them out. And that feeling, that uncertainty, it pulls you in, because the human mind is wired in a strange way. We don't chase what we understand. We chase what we can't predict. This is where real confidence begins, not in expression, but in control. Here's the truth most people never hear. Every time you react emotionally, you reveal a part of yourself. Every time you rush to explain, you expose your need for validation. Every time you try to be liked, you give others power over your behavior. And once people can read you, they don't need to overpower you. They just need to influence you. Because predictable people are controllable people. And this is why some individuals always seem one step ahead, not because they are smarter, not because they are stronger, but because they reveal less. They observe more. They speak less. But think deeper. They don't react fast. They respond strategically. Let me show you something most people ignore. When someone insults you and you react instantly, who is in control? It feels like you are, but you're not, because your reaction was triggered. It was predictable. It was expected. Now imagine the same situation, but different response. No reaction. No defense. No emotion. Just silence. Now the other person becomes uncomfortable. They start questioning. Did it affect them? Why didn't they respond? And suddenly the control shifts, because silence creates pressure, and pressure creates power. This is what dangerous confidence looks like. It doesn't try to prove anything. It doesn't rush to respond. It doesn't seek attention. It simply exists quietly but firmly. And that's what makes it intimidating. Because in a world where everyone is trying to be seen, the person who doesn't need to be seen becomes impossible to ignore. But here's the uncomfortable part. Most people can't do this, not because it's difficult, but because it requires something rare: emotional control, patience, and the ability to let go of validation. It means accepting that not everyone will understand you, not everyone will like you, not everyone will get a reaction out of you, and that feels unnatural at first, because you've been trained to respond. To explain. To prove. But the moment you stop doing that, everything changes. You become harder to read, harder to predict, harder to control. And once that happens, you stop chasing respect. And start attracting it. This is not the kind of confidence you learn in school. It's not the kind people post online. It's not loud. It's not obvious, but it's powerful because it operates in silence. In observation. In restraint. And once you understand it, you start seeing people differently. You notice who reacts and who calculates, who speaks and who watches. Who seeks validation and who controls themselves. And more importantly, you start seeing yourself, your patterns, your reactions, your need to be understood. And that realization changes everything. Because once you see the game, you can't unsee it. And from that moment on, you have a choice: stay predictable or become dangerous. Confidence, as most people understand it, is a performance. It's something you put on, like a mask. The way you speak, the way you carry yourself, the way you try to appear in front of others. But here's the truth: most people never question If your confidence only exists when people are watching, is it really confidence or is it just acting? Look closely at the world around you. The people who appear the most confident are often the most visible. They speak loudly. They dominate conversations. They make sure their presence is felt, and at first glance, it works. People notice them. They attract attention. They seem powerful. But there's something beneath the surface, something most people ignore, take away. The audience and everything changes. The energy drops. The certainty fades. The confidence disappears because it was never real to begin with. It was built on something unstable. Validation, approval, attention. And anything built on those things is fragile because the moment people stop giving it to you, you start losing yourself. This is the illusion. We live in a world where confidence is measured by how much you are seen. Social media has made it worse. People don't just want to feel confident anymore. They want to look confident. They want others to confirm it. Likes become proof. Comments become validation. Attention becomes identity. But think about this. If your confidence depends on how others react to you, then your control doesn't belong to you. It belongs to them. And that's dangerous because now your behavior is no longer yours. You adjust yourself to be liked. You hold back to avoid rejection. You act in ways that keep approval coming. Slowly, without realizing it, you become predictable, and predictable people are easy to control. This is why truly powerful individuals operate differently. They don't chase attention. They don't need constant validation. They don't perform confidence. They embody it. There's a quiet difference between someone who wants to be seen and someone who doesn't care if they are. One is dependent. The other is free. And freedom is where real confidence lives. Because when you no longer need approval, you stop adjusting yourself for others. You stop reacting to every opinion. You stop explaining your worth. You simply exist as you are. And that creates something rare, stability, a kind of confidence that doesn't rise or fall based on external reactions. It doesn't disappear when you're alone. It doesn't weaken under pressure. It doesn't need to prove itself. And that's what makes it powerful, because people can sense it, even if they don't understand it. They feel the difference between someone who is trying and someone who already is. One seeks validation, the other has control. And once you understand this, you stop asking, how do I look confident? And start asking something far more dangerous. How do I become untouchable? By validation. Emotion is not your enemy, but uncontrolled emotion is your greatest liability. Because the moment you lose control of your emotions, you lose control of yourself. And the moment you lose control of yourself, someone else can take control of you. This is how most people are manipulated, without ever realizing it, not through force, but through reaction. Think about how easy it is to trigger someone. A single insult, a small rejection, a disagreement, and suddenly everything changes. Their tone shifts, their posture tightens, their words become faster, sharper, emotional. In that moment, they feel powerful. They feel like they're defending themselves. But what's really happening is exposure, because every reaction reveals something. It shows what affects you, what bothers you, what controls you. And once someone understands your triggers, they don't need to overpower you. They just need to press the right buttons. Now imagine the opposite. Someone who feels everything, but shows nothing. Not cold. Not emotionless, just controlled. They hear the insult. They understand the intention, but they don't react immediately. They pause. They observe. And in that pause, something powerful happens. They create distance. Distance between what they feel and what they choose to do. And that distance is where power lives, because most people don't have it. Most people live in a loop. Feel gives, react gives, regret, die happens so fast. They don't even notice it. But controlled individuals break that loop. They replace it with something different. Feel gives, pause gives, decide. And that one extra step changes everything. Let's make this real. To people are criticized in front of others, the first reacts instantly. They defend themselves. They raise their voice. They try to win the moment, but in doing so, they lose something more important. Control. Because now their behavior is being driven by emotion, not by strategy. The second person does something unusual. They stay calm. They don't rush to respond. They don't explain themselves. They simply listen. And that creates tension. Silence fills the space. People start watching more closely because now something is different. The expected reaction didn't happen, and when expectations break, Attention increases. Now the second person speaks, slowly, clearly, without emotion, not to defend, but to respond, and suddenly, the dynamic shifts, because control has shifted from the person who reacted to the person who chose not to. This is the difference between being emotional and being dangerous. Dangerous confidence is not about suppressing how you feel. It's about mastering it. It's about understanding that emotions are signals, not commands. You can feel anger without acting on it. You can feel pressure without collapsing under it. You can feel fear without showing it. And when you reach that level of control, something changes. You become harder to manipulate, harder to provoke, harder to predict, because people can no longer use your emotions against you. And that's when you start operating on a different level, not reacting to the world, but choosing how you move within it. And once you master that, you stop being controlled by situations. And start controlling them. Most people don't lose power because they are weak. They lose power because they are understood too quickly. Within minutes of meeting someone, people can already read them, their tone, their reactions, their habits. It doesn't take long. A few conversations, a few emotional responses, and the pattern becomes clear. And once your pattern is clear, you become predictable. And predictable people are easy to handle. Easy to influence, easy to control. This is why being understood too quickly is dangerous. Because the moment someone figures you out, they know how to deal with you. They know what to say, when to push, when to pull back. But when someone can't read you, everything changes. Uncertainty enters the equation. And uncertainty makes people cautious. Think about it. When you meet someone who talks a lot, reacts quickly, shares everything, you feel comfortable around them because you understand them. You know what to expect. But when you meet someone who speaks less, who doesn't react immediately, who reveals very little about themselves, you pay more attention, not out of comfort, but out of curiosity, because your mind is trying to solve them. What are they thinking? What do they want? How will they respond? And until you find those answers, you remain focused on them. This is the quiet power of being unreadable. It creates attention without asking for it. It creates respect without demanding it, because people naturally respect what they cannot easily understand. This is why silence is powerful, not because it hides weakness, but because it hides information. And information is control. Every time you speak unnecessarily, you give something away, your opinions, your emotions, your intentions. Piece by piece, people start building a profile of you. And once that profile is complete, you become easy to predict. But when you control what you reveal, you control how others perceive you. You decide what they know, and more importantly, what they don't know. This doesn't mean becoming distant or antisocial. It means being intentional, speaking when necessary, not constantly, responding with thought, not impulse, allowing silence to do its work. Because silence creates space. And in that space, people project. They fill the gaps with their own assumptions, and those assumptions often work in your favor. You don't need to prove strength. You just need to avoid revealing weakness. This is why the most powerful individuals are often the least expressive. They observe more than they speak. They listen more than they reveal. And because of that, they always know more than others realize. While others are busy expressing themselves, they are studying everyone in the room, learning patterns, noticing reactions, understanding behavior. And that gives them an advantage. Because when you understand others, while they don't fully understand you, you hold the upper hand. This is what makes someone quietly intimidating. Not aggression, not dominance, but mystery. Because the less people can read you, the more carefully they treat you. And that is power without effort. Most people don't realize it, but the moment you need something, you lose power over it. The moment you need approval, you start chasing it. The moment you need someone's attention, you start adjusting yourself. The moment you fear losing something, you give it control over you. This is where most people become vulnerable, not because they are weak, but because they are attached. Attached to outcomes, attached to opinions, attached to people. And attachment creates pressure. It makes you act differently. You speak more carefully. You react more emotionally. You tolerate things you normally wouldn't, because now there's something to lose. And when there's something to lose, there's something to control. This is why the person who cares less often wins. Not because they are better, but because they are free. Free from the pressure of needing a specific result. Free from the fear of rejection. free from the need to be accepted. And that freedom is power. Let's make this real. Imagine a negotiation. Two people are sitting across from each other. One needs the deal. They want it badly. You can feel it in their tone, their urgency, their behavior. They agree too quickly. They explain too much. They try to please. Because losing the deal feels like a loss. The other person, they are calm, not desperate, not rushed. They're willing to walk away. And that changes everything. Because the one who can walk away controls the outcome. Now shift this into relationships. The person who is more emotionally invested feels more, thinks more, worries more, and slowly they start losing control. They overthink messages. They react to small changes. They seek reassurance, while the other person moves freely because they are less attached. This doesn't mean they don't care. It means they are not dependent. And that difference is everything. Detachment is often misunderstood. People think it means being cold, distant, emotionless. But that's not what it is. Detachment is control. It's the ability to feel without being controlled by what you feel. It's caring without needing. It's being present without becoming dependent. Because the moment you need something to feel stable, you've already given it power over you. But when you can walk away, when you can let go, when you can accept any outcome, you become dangerous. Because now, nothing can be used against you. No fear. No pressure. No leverage. And that creates a different kind of presence. Calm. Grounded. Unshaken. People can sense it. They feel that you're not chasing. Not forcing. Not depending. And because of that, they start adjusting to you instead of you adjusting to them. This is the ultimate advantage. Not controlling others, but removing their ability to control you. And once you reach that level, you stop asking, what if I lose this? And start realizing there's nothing here. I need to keep my power. Most people don't make decisions. They react to feelings, and then they call it a decision. That's the problem. Because emotions are fast. They push you to act immediately. To speak quickly, to respond without thinking, to do something just to relieve the feeling. But strategy works differently. Strategy is slow. It observes first, analyzes second, acts last. And that difference separates controlled individuals from reactive ones. Think about how many times people regret their actions, words they wish they didn't say, decisions they wish they didn't make, reactions they wish they could take back. Why does that happen? Because the action came before the thinking, emotion took control, and logic arrived late. This is how most people live, moment to moment. Reacting. Responding. Adjusting, based on how they feel, not what makes sense. But dangerous confidence requires something else. It requires distance, not just emotional control, but mental clarity, the ability to step outside the moment and see it for what it is, not what it feels like, but what it actually means. Let's look at a simple example. Someone disrespects you. Emotion says, respond immediately. Defend yourself. Prove your worth. Strategy asks, what is the outcome I want? Are you trying to win the argument or control the situation? Because those are not the same. Winning an argument feels good in the moment, but controlling the situation gives long-term power, and most people choose the first because it satisfies emotion, not strategy. Strategic thinkers understand something most people ignore. Every situation has layers. What is being said and why it is being said. What is happening and what is being attempted. They don't just react to words, they analyze intent, and that gives them an advantage. Because when you understand intent, you can respond in a way that disrupts it. Let's go deeper. If someone tries to provoke you and you react, you confirm their control. But if you recognize the attempt and choose not to engage, you break the pattern. You take control back. This is what makes someone mentally dangerous. Not aggression, not dominance, but awareness. The ability to see through situations before reacting to them. And that requires patience, because strategy is uncomfortable at first. It requires you to pause when everything inside you wants to react, to stay silent, when you want to speak. To observe, when you want to act. But in that discomfort, something powerful develops. Clarity. You start seeing patterns in people. You notice behaviors repeating. You understand who is emotional and who is calculating. And slowly, you stop being part of the reaction cycle. You step outside of it. Now you're not just experiencing situations. You're reading them. And once you can read a situation, you can influence it. Because you're no longer acting randomly, you're acting intentionally. Every word, every response, every silence becomes a choice, not a reaction, and that's when your presence changes. People stop seeing you as emotional. They stop seeing you as predictable. They start seeing you as someone who thinks before they move, and that alone creates pressure. Because most people don't know how to deal with someone who doesn't react normally, someone who doesn't follow emotional patterns, someone who doesn't rush. That's the power of strategy. It removes you from chaos and places you in control. And once you start thinking this way, you realize something important. You don't need to win every moment. You just need to control the outcome. If you want control, you don't start with yourself. You start with people. Because no matter how strong, calm, or strategic you become, if you don't understand human nature, you'll always be reacting to it. And most people never take the time to see what actually drives others. They look at behavior, but they ignore the reason behind it. That's where they lose. Because people are not random. They follow patterns, invisible patterns, driven by simple things. Ego, insecurity, desire, fear. Everything people do comes back to these. But they don't show it directly. They hide it behind words, actions, personalities, which is why most people get confused. They take things at face value. They believe what they hear. They react to what they see. But those who understand human nature look deeper. They don't just listen to words. They observe behavior, because behavior reveals truth. For example, someone constantly talks about their achievements. On the surface, it looks like confidence, but underneath, it's often insecurity, a need to prove something, a need to be seen. Another person constantly seeks approval. They ask for opinions. They hesitate to act. They look for reassurance. It appears polite, but underneath, fear of rejection. Fear of being wrong. Once you start seeing these patterns, everything changes. You stop taking things personally because you realize most people are not reacting to you. They are reacting from themselves. Their past, their fears, their insecurities, and that realization gives you control, because now you're not emotionally involved. You're observing. And when you observe, instead of react, you gain an advantage. Let's take manipulation. Most people think manipulation is complicated, but it's not. It's predictable. If someone craves attention, give them attention and guide their behavior. If someone fears losing something, create the idea of loss and influence their decisions. If someone has a strong ego, challenge it and control their reactions. It sounds simple because it is. People are driven by internal needs, and those needs control their actions. But here's the difference. Most people are controlled by their needs. Powerful individuals understand them. They don't get pulled into emotional responses. They stay aware. They recognize patterns quickly, and once they recognize a pattern, they know exactly how to respond, not emotionally, but strategically. This doesn't mean you manipulate everyone. It means you understand the game being played. Because whether you realize it or not, people are constantly influencing each other through words, through behavior, through subtle signals. And if you don't understand it, you become part of it. Unconsciously. But when you do understand it, you step outside. You stop reacting blindly. You stop getting pulled into emotional traps. You start seeing intent behind actions. And that changes everything. Because now, you're not just interacting with people, you're reading them. And once you can read people, you stop being controlled by them. And start deciding how to engage on your terms. Most people think influence is loud. They think it's about persuasion, arguments, convincing others with words. But real influence rarely looks like influence at all. It's quiet, subtle, almost invisible. And that's what makes it powerful. Because when influence is obvious, people resist it. But when it's subtle, they follow it without realizing. This is the art of silent influence. Not forcing outcomes, but guiding them. Let's start with something simple. Presence. Walk into a room and say nothing. Just observe. Most people will fill the silence. They'll speak more, reveal more, expose more. Why? Because silence creates discomfort, and people rush to remove that discomfort. But if you stay calm, if you don't rush to speak, you gain something valuable. Information. And information is leverage. Now think about conversations. Most people talk to express themselves. They interrupt. They react quickly. They try to be understood, but powerful individuals do the opposite. They listen. not just to words, but to tone, pauses, body language. Because influence doesn't come from speaking first. It comes from understanding first. And once you understand someone, you can guide the interaction. Subtly. Without force. For example, if you want someone to open up, you don't push them. You create space. You stay calm. You don't interrupt. You let silence do the work. Eventually, they feel that silence and reveal more than they intended. Another example. If you want to lead a conversation, you don't dominate it. You ask the right questions. Questions that guide direction. Questions that make others think. And slowly, without realizing, they start moving where you want them to go. This is influence without resistance. Because it doesn't feel like control. It feels natural. That's the key. The best influence feels like choice, not pressure. And this is why emotional control matters. Because if you're reactive, you can't guide anything. You're too busy responding. But when you're calm, when you're observing, when you're intentional, you start shaping situations quietly. Your tone changes outcomes. Your timing changes reactions. Your silence changes dynamics. And people feel it, even if they don't understand it. They feel that you're not easy to read, not easy to influence. And because of that, they become more receptive to you, more attentive, more careful. That's silent power, not demanding control, but creating an environment where control naturally shifts to you. And once you understand this, you stop trying to convince people. You stop forcing outcomes. You simply position yourself and let human nature do the rest. Power is not just what you do, it's also what you allow. Most people think being busy equals being productive, but being busy often equals being distracted. Every interaction, every demand, every small drama, it takes a piece of you. And once your energy is fragmented, your presence weakens, your decisions slow, your confidence fades. Think about the people around you who drains you the most, the ones who demand attention, the ones who provoke emotional reactions, the ones who thrive on chaos. Every minute you spend on them is a minute lost. Every argument you engage in, every opinion you defend, consumes the part of you that could be untouchable. Protecting your energy is not selfish, it is strategic. It begins with awareness, noticing what pulls at you, what triggers you, and who benefits from your reactions. Then comes boundaries, simple, clear, invisible lines, not to isolate yourself, but to preserve your focus. You don't have to respond to everything. You don't have to explain yourself. You don't have to engage in every situation. Discipline is key. Not every fight is worth your attention. Not every person is worth your time. Not every situation needs your energy. Imagine walking into a crowded room, voices shouting, opinions flying. Instead of reacting, you move deliberately, choosing where to focus, choosing what deserves a fraction of your attention, and that's selective. Focus changes everything, because most people scatter their energy, reacting to noise, not signals. But you conserve it, you direct it, you use it when it matters. This also applies internally. Your thoughts, your worries, your emotions, uncontrolled, they are just as draining as toxic people. Learning to manage your internal world, to observe your mind without being swept away, is as critical as guarding against external distractions. When you protect your energy, you create clarity, you become hard to shake, you become intentional. Your actions are more powerful because they are undiluted. And here's the hidden truth most people never notice. The quieter you become, the less reactive you are, the more others unconsciously follow your rhythm. They sense the control. They feel the stability. They instinctively adapt to it. And that is a rare form of power, because energy is finite, and the person who can guard it, direct it, preserve it, holds a form of influence few ever realize. In short, power is not about doing everything. It's about keeping what matters and letting the rest fade away. Once you master that, your focus becomes untouchable, your energy becomes a weapon, and your confidence becomes dangerous. Life will test you, chaos will arrive, criticism will come, and the world will try to push you off balance. Most people bend under pressure. They react impulsively. They crumble when challenged. They seek approval to regain stability. But dangerous confidence thrives on something else, mental unshakability. This is not immunity to emotion. It is mastery over it. It is stability in the storm. It is calm when others panic. Imagine a room filled with tension. A conflict erupts. Voices rise. Accusations fly. Some people react immediately. Their mind races, their heart pounds, their decisions falter. Then there's the unshakable person. They observe, they listen, they feel the tension, but it doesn't control them. That difference is magnetic. People are drawn to it. They respect it. They hesitate to challenge it. Becoming unshakable begins with perception, recognizing that the external world does not define your inner state. Events are neutral. It is your reaction, or lack of it, that shapes reality. Then comes preparation, anticipating pressure, criticism, and challenges before they arrive. Understanding that conflict is inevitable and stability is a choice. Next is practice. The small moments where you deliberately pause, where you refuse to react impulsively, where you test your control in low-stakes situations until it becomes instinctive. Through these steps, a new identity forms, one that is not easily swayed, one that cannot be manipulated by chaos, criticism, or provocation. Consider leaders, negotiators, or elite performers. Their unshakable presence is what gives them authority. It's not the loudest voice, the biggest gesture, or the strongest words. It's the quiet, steady control over mind and emotion. This stability does more than protect. It attracts, it influences, it changes the way people behave around you. People sense when someone is emotionally reactive. They push, provoke, and test limits, but they also sense unshakability. They hesitate. They respect boundaries without confrontation. They adjust to your rhythm unconsciously. Being mentally unshakable also frees you from fear, fear of judgment, fear of loss, fear of failure. When your inner state cannot be manipulated, you gain clarity. You see the moves of others without distortion. You respond strategically, not reactively. And here's the hidden edge. The calmer you remain, the more chaotic the world becomes, the more influence you hold. Because unshakable individuals do not compete in the chaos. They create a separate lane, controlled, steady, and deliberate. Once you cultivate this, everything changes. Your decisions are sharper. Your presence is heavier. Your confidence becomes truly dangerous. And in a world full of reactionary minds, being unshakable is power most people never realize they can wield. Look back for a moment. Think about the person you were before this journey. Predictable, reactive, seeking approval, controlled by emotion, vulnerable to chaos. Now, look at who you are becoming. Controlled, strategic, calm, detached, unreadable, mentally unshakable. This transformation isn't just knowledge, it's identity. A shift so deep that once it takes hold, it can't be reversed. You've learned the hidden truths most people ignore. That loud confidence is often fragile. That emotion without control is a weakness. That predictability gives others power over you. That attachment creates vulnerability. That strategy always trumps reaction. That understanding human nature allows you to navigate any social terrain. That silent influence is more powerful than overt persuasion. And that protecting your energy and cultivating mental resilience creates authority others feel, even without words. It all adds up to one thing: dangerous confidence, not arrogance, not aggression, but a quiet, commanding presence that cannot be ignored. Imagine walking into any situation with this mindset. You are aware of your emotions. You are aware of others' patterns. You decide your actions deliberately. You let silence work in your favor. You protect your energy. You hold your ground under pressure. People notice, even if they don't understand why. They sense it, and they respond. Because true power doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't shout. It doesn't seek permission. It simply exists, and the world bends around it, subtly, inevitably. This is the dangerous transformation from someone controlled by circumstance to someone who navigates it with clarity, calm, and authority. But remember this: once you see the game, you can never unsee it. You will recognize patterns. You will notice manipulation. You will see predictability everywhere and know how to act differently. And that realization is liberating and powerful and dangerous. The final step is yours: to internalize these lessons, to practice them daily, to become someone who is impossible to read, impossible to manipulate, and impossible to ignore. Because dangerous confidence is not given, it is earned through awareness, through discipline, through mastery of self and perception. Take a deep breath. A new version of you is emerging, not louder, not flashier, but stronger, calmer, strategic, unshakable, And in a world of chaos and unpredictability, that quiet, controlled strength is the rarest and most feared form of power. Once you step fully into it, you don't just navigate life differently. You exist differently, and others adjust to your presence without even realizing it. Now, carry it with you. Be aware, be strategic, be silent when needed, be unshakable. Because the world is predictable only if you allow it to be. And you will no longer be predictable. You have transformed. You have become dangerous. And from here, there is no turning back.